From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The United Nations General Assembly is due to debate the resolution to end the U.S. blockade against Cuba. The Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez has said the U.S. delegation has presented 8 amendments to the resolution to delay the voting. This to hamper the approval of the resolution to end the economic, commercial and financial blockade against Cuba. Country members will vote on the resolution on Thursday. But Rodriguez believes amendments to the draft resolution will be rejected.
There
is a new situation this year, which is a new State Department of the United States that has decided to present amendments against the resolution of the blockade, with the purpose of creating a pretext to harden this blockade against Cuba. This is a policy that has proclaimed and that the statement has the fact are implications to present an illusion about an international support for this policy and also to disrupt, consume time and hinder the resolution adoption.
The Cuban foreign minister also says the U.S. blockade continues to be a massive violation of Cubans' human rights.
The United States already know that it cannot prevent the adoption of forceful resolution with a major unanimity of the General Assembly, with an obsolete policy and anchored with the Cold War according to Geneva against the genocide crime. It is a human rights violation of every citizen and internationally who transgresses the trade law and freedom of navigation, which constitutes an aggression act and economic warfare.
Thousands of people have protested in Sao Paulo against the president-elect Jair Bolsonaro. Chanting and carrying banners that read, "Dictatorship never again," demonstrators took to the streets in the first national protest since Sunday's election. Social movements marched through the main avenue in Sao Paulo under heavy police presence. Demonstrators say they will resist to the rise of fascism in Brazil and will defend democracy.
My name is Carla Victoria from the World Women's March, and I'm here today to say no to everything Bolsonaro represents. He represents fear, violence, a fascist future, and a future in which they will not accept anyone who is different. And his plan for the political economy will increase poverty. We are here today against all of this. We are angry, and that is why we are here on the streets.
Footage of military police attacking a female student activist in the Brazilian city of Salvador has emerged shortly after Bolsonaro was announced as president-elect. The woman was left partially conscious and bleeding from the head. The confrontation was filmed by media production company Red Fish, who says supporters of Bolsonaro provoked supporters of Fernando Haddad. The police then went after supporters of the Workers' Party. Meanwhile, the president of the Workers' Party, Gleisi Hoffmann, has said they are forming a resistance front against the incoming government. Left-leaning groups, including social movements and political parties, held a democratic resistance assembly in Rio de Janeiro. Hoffmann also said the electoral process was marred by irregularities during the campaign that affected the party's candidacy.
I think that if there is one word, one verb to be conjugated at this moment, it is to resist. That's why one of the decisions of our meeting was to unite all of our forces with those of others to build an ample front of resistance for democracy and for the people's right against the government that is about to take power.
And Bolsonaro has started rolling out key points in his hardline agenda. The top economic advisor for Bolsonaro, Paulo Guedes, has told reporters that the president-elect will take up fiscal reforms as part of his agenda. Guedes also confirmed a decision to create an economic super-ministry combining finance, planning, industry and trade. Bolsonaro's first trips as president will be to Chile, Israel and the United States. countries his team says share our worldviews. The newly elected president has also announced he invited Judge Sergio Moro to serve on the country's Supreme Court. Moro was the judge responsible for persecuting former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, leading to his imprisonment. The judge has not given an official answer yet, but he has already expressed his willingness to accept the offer to local media outlets. The European Union wants the incoming president to consolidate democracy and respect the decision of the Brazilian people. EU spokesman Natasha Bertut commented on Brazil when asked if she thought Bolsonaro posed a threat to democratic values. Given his admiration for the former military dictatorship and racism, she confirmed that senior officials are to sign a congratulatory letter to Bolsonaro, who won the runoff election with 55% of the vote.
The interests. We regret the loss of a very...
We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute. Welcome back. Salvadoran President Salvador Sánchez-Serén has arrived in China for an official visit. This is the first time that a Salvadoran head of state visits China. Sánchez-Serén met Chinese Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, King Wang, to strengthen diplomatic ties between the two countries. In August, El Salvador broke ties with Taiwan to begin relations with China. The various migrant caravans traveling to the U.S.-Mexico border continue to persevere despite the hardships. The group that crossed from Guatemala into Mexico on Monday, it is now close to reaching the town of Tapachula. Thousands of migrants from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador have decided to start their journey fleeing poverty and violence, all while the United States threatens with action.
Deploying over 5,000 troops to the US-Mexico border is Donald Trump's answer to the migrant exodus that has fled Central America. They want to enter the US to claim asylum, but Trump's response has made experts feel uneasy and they fear the outcome.
Those forces are trained to kill. Are they really going there to kill immigrant workers who are coming to file an asylum claim? That's a violation not only of those people's rights, it's a violation of international law. And yet that's the dominant political narrative in America: fear, paranoia, hatred, racism, xenophobia.
With midterm elections being a week away, the Trump administration's actions against migrants send a clear sign to voters.
Yeah, the politics of fear and manipulation are dominant politics now in the United States. The Trump administration has told the American people, especially through the media, that these thousands, a few thousand workers coming from Central America seeking asylum, which is their legal right to have an asylum claim, that they are an invading horde that's coming to take over America.
But it's much worse, as the thousands of troops are just the start.
That is just the start of this operation. We'll continue to adjust the numbers and inform you of those, but please know that's in addition to the 2,092 that are already employed from our National Guard Operation Guardian support that's been so effective.
Protection of the nation from foreign terrorists.
Migrant policies have become increasingly hostile and intolerant under the current administration. Their so-called zero-tolerance policy has separated thousands of children from their parents between April and June of this year.
Nearly 70% of the people in the migrant caravan heading to the U.S. are reportedly under the age of 30. The unemployment rate in Honduras, which is 55%, is why they're living in search of better opportunities.
From the very first day they left San Pedro Sula, it was evident that most of the people were children and young adults. Violence and the lack of opportunities made them flee.
There is no work to be found here. I have looked for so long. There are killings every day. Taxes are through the roof. The government makes all sorts of promises, but they never do anything. We are looking for a better life.
Such testimonies are all too familiar among the hundreds of migrants. Gangs rule the streets of Honduras, and young people often Henry Diaz lost his life at the Guatemala-Mexico border because of a rubber bullet.
It's sad to see police cars in our neighborhoods. Young people flee in fear, regardless of whether they have done something wrong or not. It feels like we don't have any freedom. We can't go outside in peace.
Tragedies like that of Henry Diaz are an everyday occurrence in gang-controlled neighborhoods. Families are displaced, if not threatened. Risks increase if they have a business.
He used to sell plastic products door to door, but there are some neighborhoods where he couldn't go. Facing such uncertainty, he decided to leave.
The migrant phenomena is on the rise to the point where social organizations say 100 underage migrants leave the country on a monthly basis.
Women across Colombia have arrived in the capital of Bogota to analyze a follow-up report on the implementation of the peace agreement. They condemned the government for the lack of commitment to protect social leaders.
Women from the regions that have historically been affected by the armed conflict arrived in Bogota to see how far the peace process has come. They are deeply disappointed that social leaders continue to be murdered.
Most of the murders of leaders happens in conflict-ridden areas. The violence from dissidents and armed groups is linked to drug trafficking.
Maria Arrizabeleta, one of the two survivors of the struggle for women's vote in Colombia, says that women have been victims of war and advocate for peace.
This peace process has served everybody because it takes a little bit of the load of the war. The war is horrible. We don't give birth to our children to be murdered. So the fact that the murders have decreased gives us a lot of joy. But there is still a long way to go.
The peace agreement gave hope to put an end to the armed conflict and to compensate the victims. But the reality is very different.
They are suffering, especially because of the non-compliance from the state. Some officials lack the will to do anything.
This attitude prevails, and the government does nothing to end inequality.
These alerts have to do with gender equality. They also have to do with the closure of the gaps that we have, the inequalities that we have here in Colombia. It has to do with the employability of women, and it also has to do with the issue of justice and strengthening of peace institutions.
Women have called on the government to advance the implementation of the peace agreement and to guarantee the life of those who tirelessly work for peace and equality.
Panama is issuing new tourism cards to allow Cuban citizens with ties to private businesses to enter the country visa-free for a month-long stay. This new measure shows growing commercial ties between the two countries. Cuba is looking for more international investments and credit from friendly countries as aid from Venezuela has decreased due to sanctions imposed by the US and the European Union.
This step that we've taken, I believe that will strengthen the economic opening that you're seeing in Cuba. And following the country's rules and respecting the country's regulations and all their systems, it will make visits to Panama easier, because many Cubans are traveling. They travel to other countries, they return to their country, and they're setting up their own businesses. They're moving forward, and this facilitates this process.
Mexico's President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador has announced that he's going to cancel the international airport project because that's what people want.
The staple project of the administration of the outgoing president, Enrique Peña Nieto, is no more. On December the 1st, all work on Mexico City's new international airport will come to a halt, and the same day, AMLO is set to take office.
Se creará un sistema aeroportuario.
We will create a new airport system made up of Mexico City's international airport, Toluca's international airport, and a new international airport that will be built where Santa Lucia Air Base currently stands. This will allow us to serve anywhere between 60 and 70 million passengers per year.
During a press conference, AMLO announced the news, which was the result of a referendum that asked people whether construction of the airport should go ahead or not.
Personal interests will no longer be served. Corruption is over. This decision shows we have not buckled to any pressure. We are establishing a clear division between economic power and political power.
He also mentioned that dropping the project will save the government about $10 billion and will preserve the Nabor Cadillo Lake.
Eso tiene que ser un eje.
This area needs to be made into an ecological park, an area that celebrates the environment and brings people together.
Meanwhile, the outgoing president said the Texcoco super project will go on until the last day of his mandate.
The incoming government will have to confront the payment of previous agreements and will have to deal with rising taxes for travelers.
There are 5 major business groups involved in this mega project, that is the airport, who all claim to have completed over 30% of the work. The incoming government say they will cover all non-refundable expenses of contractors.
Activists, academics, and politicians in Colombia are protesting against fracking in the Magdalena region. They say that while the nation needs to exploit its resources, they need to protect their natural water sources. The region's water levels will be in great danger given the amount of water that's needed for fracking. At least 23 condors have been poisoned in the Patagonia, according to Argentinian environmental organization. The non-profit organization Argentinian Birds says a banned substance was used to poison Andean condors across the Patagonian provinces. In the last year, more than 90 birds have been poisoned in the country. Condors are the largest flying birds in the world, and their population is declining. We'll take a short break now. World news are next. Welcome back. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, has called for the Saudi-led coalition to stop the bombing of Yemen. Mattis said the attacks have to cease in the next 30 days and that war has been going on for long enough in that region. This call comes in criticism of the U.S. support for the Saudi-led coalition in the conflict.
But our goal right now is to achieve a level of capability by those forces fighting against the Houthis that they are not killing innocent people. The longer-term solution, and by longer-term I mean 30 days from now, we want to see everybody around a peace table based on a ceasefire, based on a pullback from the border, and then based on ceasing dropping of bombs that will permit the special envoy, Martin Griffiths, who's very good, he knows what he's doing, to get them together in Sweden and end this war. That is the only way we're going to really solve this.
One person has died and 3 others injured in an explosion at the Federal Security Service's headquarters in Russia. Russia's investigative committee said a 17-year-old teenager blew himself up in the lobby of the office, detonating a homemade bomb. The committee said the teenager was a resident of the city where the headquarters are. The cause of the incident are being investigated. Rescue teams in the Philippines have reportedly pulled out 4 survivors who were buried in a typhoon-triggered landslides. Rescue workers continue their search for at least 30 people still trapped under the rubble. 7 people were killed on Tuesday when Typhoon U2 swept across the main island of Luzon. A team searching for Indonesia's crashed Lion Air flight could have found the plane's fuselage off Jakarta's coast. Navy divers heard an underwater pinging sound, possibly indicating the location of the jet. A team has since been dispatched to confirm the discovery. The 189 passengers on board are all presumed dead. Meanwhile, Indonesia's transport minister has dismissed Lion Air's technical director and several of its technicians after the crash. The minister cited Monday's deadly crash as the reason. It is not clear whether the removal is only a temporary measure as investigations continue. The Palestine Liberation Organization has called on Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to suspend the recognition of the State of Israel and halt security cooperation in the West Bank. Our correspondent in Cairo, Nayara Tardó, has more.
The Palestine Liberation Organization has demanded that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas stop security cooperation with Israel as they continue to kill Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and expand their cooperation of territories in the West Bank. This measure will end any and all security coordinations with Israel and therefore declare all economic agreements that have been violated by Tel Aviv invalid. During a meeting that lasted 2 days in Ramallah, officials asked to suspend the recognition of Israel until Palestine is recognized as a legitimate state. This measure is trying to suspend the historic recognition of Israel, which could reformulate the founding principles of the deteriorated peace agreement between Israel and Palestine.
In a landmark ruling, Pakistan's Supreme Court has acquitted a woman who was pinned on a death row for 8 years on a blasphemy charge. Asia Bibi won her appeal against the conviction and her death sentence was subsequently overturned. Back in 2010, she was found guilty of taking the Prophet Muhammad's name in vain while arguing with neighbors. Security has been intensified in Islamabad, amid concerns that ruling could spark protests. India has unveiled the world's tallest statue in the western state of Wahad. At least at 182 meters, it has twice the height of the Statue of Liberty. The bronze statue has been made in honor of one of India's biggest freedom fighters, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Today marks his 75th birth anniversary. And we come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.